Guys, I want to welcome you to another episode of the Franchise Advisory Board where we bring experts in from around the industry, franchise founders, franchise suppliers to help give you actionable, insightful ways to build a memorable brand that will last. And I've got with me today a friend of mine, Jacob Grady. If you don't know him, Jacob's not that guy that's going to like jump on the stage everywhere and try to get in front of everyone's face. It's just not in his nature. But let me tell you a little bit about Jacob, then I'll turn some time over to him so you guys can learn a bit about him and Surface Experts. He's the CEO founder of this great brand. It's the fastest growing hard surface mobile repair franchise in the industry. So they go into B2B primarily, so hotels and other buildings and repair any hard surface and restore it back to so you can't even tell there's a damage. Fantastic brand. They've been franchising since 2019. They've already got 115 owners, 135 territories, a very tech forward organization. And Jacob, though, is interesting because, well, for a lot of reasons, but things that I love about Jacob are he has learned a lot actually building businesses abroad and onshore. So in Colombia and Bogotá, he actually runs a nonprofit which helps save young girls from human trafficking down there. He also loves mushroom hunting and is about to go morel hunting with his family this weekend. So super down to earth, just a great human being. And Jacob, thanks for being a guest on the show. Tell us a bit more about you and Surface Experts.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Dave. So like I said, we started in April. We sold our first franchise in April of 2019. Yeah, I got into this in a very, I guess, different, unorthodox way. I was living in Bogota, Colombia, and I was working with this Colombian church on opening up this home for girls that were at high risk of sex trafficking, which is a huge problem, kind of in the mid 2000s in Bogota. And we realized early on we needed to figure out a way to make money because this girls' home is very expensive. Bogota is a fairly developed city. So friends of ours had this repair company and in Washington, and we said, "Hey, would you mind coming down and training myself and a couple people from our church, and we'll, um, love to start this business." And my dad pitched in money. We bought a motorcycle. We fabricated this like fiberglass box that sat on the back of the motorcycle that we could put all our tools and supplies in, and then we just started going out and selling, you know, repairs on cracked tile from settling buildings, damaged furniture in hotels, countertops that had chips on it, granite countertops. So just kind of like any interior hard surface. We did that for a little while, and money from that went to supporting the girls' home. Then my wife and I decided to move back to the States. We moved to Portland, Oregon, and then started the business there in Portland in 2009. Like literally the right when everything had just kind of like everyone was freaking out. I actually had a business plan, Dave. You'll appreciate this. I was really into chocolate. Like my wife had given me bought a class for like to become a chocolatier, and so I taken like kind of like an very introductory course on
Yeah.
how to like chocolate. And I had this business plan of starting like a really high end chocolate shop in Portland.
Mhm.
And it's 2009. I'm looking at like commercial space, and the cost is starting to add up in my mind. And my dad, who is a consummate entrepreneur, he's had multiple businesses. He's like, Jacob, we're going through one of the worst recessions since the Great Depression. Like, no one's going to buy your $5 bonbon. Like, you should do this repair company, do this repair business. And so that's what tipped me over the edge. I started the business in Portland, just myself. I have a couple fun stories from that I could share if we get time, but started it there and then just kind of built it up over the years. And in 2017, I sold it to an employee and another guy. They went in and bought it, and I moved back to Spokane, Washington, where I'm from, where my wife's from. And I thought I was out of the repair business. And then I met this guy, Dennis Mulgannon. I spent a year trying to figure out what I was going to do, and met this guy, Dennis Mulgannon, who was trying to sell me a franchise. And I told him about. He asked, "Well, what'd you do before?" And so we started talking. That he's like, "Have you ever thought about franchising it?" And I was like, "I have, but I don't know what that would look like." And he goes, "Well, hey, I might be able to help you out there." And what I learned was he was an FSO, like kind of a small boutique FSO. He didn't like that term. He called himself an FDO, franchise development
Sure, yeah.
organization. But him and I partnered up and we started this thing, and yeah, it's been a crazy, wild ride.
Yeah, that's great. Well, and now you guys have a whole bunch of owners, and you continue to
Yeah.
grow. And what, 27 units last year, is that right? Or
Yep. Yep.
uh,
So, and we've sold 14 this year. We really are. I mean, it's interesting. In the beginning, I would say, really up until last year, so much of our franchise development process was around like trying to get deals done. And not that we're not trying to get deals done, but we really starting this fall, I almost had this like, we sold like 16 deals in our fourth quarter. It was crazy.
wow.
And I had this sort of sense of like, are we going too fast? Like we need to like slow down. I want to make sure our filter, we're letting the right people in.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
that's kind of where like the mindset shift has changed now. We always have held like I would say a higher bar in the sense of like we say no to people fairly regularly.
Hmm.
We figure out ways for them to self-select out. Um, but even more recently, like how do we tighten up our criteria? Because I would say our strong suit is validation. When we get people, candidates into validation, we have 20 different franchises that do validation calls every week. So it's a pair of them, and that that goes really, really well. The problem is, how do you fish out the people that aren't going to be a good fit for your system? So,
Hmm.
we can talk about that this week today. I mean, we have lots of lessons learned over the years.
Yeah. Well, and I love where you're going with this. So, the guys, the topic today is, especially right now, everybody's really struggling to find leads and to build their franchises and to get people through the funnel. But sometimes it doesn't. That's okay because it's more important that we get the right people through the door. So, we're going to talk a lot about how do we make sure we're getting the right franchise owners into an ecosystem so they can help the ecosystem to thrive and also they can thrive in the ecosystem. It's got to be a
Yeah.
two-way street. Tell us. I mean, obviously you've got some stories from maybe we'll turn back to the early days for a minute
Yeah.
and have you share a couple of the big lessons you learned as you were starting to grow this brand.
Yeah. Um, so this isn't super early on, but I remember one thing that stands out to me, and this would be like a good lesson for the audience. If we have one of our franchisees who is a former Chick-fil-A franchisee,
Mhm.
which is kind of an anomaly. His name's Daryl, and Daryl and I actually met in Rwanda, in Kigali, Rwanda. We were helping young entrepreneurs start franchises, and he was a franchisee operator for Chick-fil-A. Long story short, he ends up becoming a franchisee with Surface Experts. Leaves Chick-fil-A, and he shared this story about oh, what's his name? The founder.
I don't know.
Yeah, the founder of Chick-fil-A. He's getting pressured by all these like really smart guys to like take PE, private equity money, and to like really like build, just like this is back in like the 90s when Boston market was growing like crazy. And everyone's like, you got to grow, we got to put up more stores, get more stores. They only had several hundred stores at this point, mostly in the Southeast, in the South. And he finally like slammed his hand down on the table and he goes, enough. And he goes, better before bigger. And his conviction around building just a better business and really helping his operators thrive, that's why Chick-fil-A is like the gold standard when it comes to like service. They just were so adamant around better before bigger. And that like really stood out to me. It's hard in the beginning because I don't know how many people do it. For us, we didn't take on debt. We were bankrolling this thing out of my own personal savings. My dad pitched in some money, a little bit of money in the beginning. Um, Franchise sales is oftentimes like bankrolling growth, right? Because you're
Hmm.
not making a ton of money off of your royalties.
No.
And so it's really hand to mouth. You're paying yourself very little. So there's a real challenge with that. And there were, especially during COVID, there were many months where I didn't pay myself anything. And I'm like, hey, I got to figure this out.
Hmm.
But that better before bigger, I think to me, was a big like eye opener. I saw another brand who I met the owners and I knew the franchisors, and they'd grown like crazy. They sold like something like 80 franchises in their first like 2.5 years
Hmm.
of franchising.
Yeah.
And I remember meeting with them thinking, God, that would be, I wonder, that's kind of got to pose its own challenges. And they're like, oh yeah, like we sold them too fast,
Yeah.
like too fast.
Mm.
And so I think the whole focusing on really building a great business. I think one couple of the mistakes, if I'll highlight early on, are we didn't have our core values like line. We knew what our core values were, but we didn't have like a really good filter to run people through to see if their core value fit. This is actually to this day one of my biggest challenges is try to get away from like my gut feeling on somebody, whether I want to approve them or not. But I think we have more gates and things in place to flush out whether someone's a core value fit. And we had a couple people early on that had we been more explicit in asking questions and kind of drilling down into core values, we probably would have not selected.
Mm.
Um, and we also just needed more entrepreneurial people. We thankfully did have a number of entrepreneurial people early on, but when you have 5, 10, 20, 30 franchises, they really need to be figure it out type of people. It cannot be like, in a lot of ways, the franchisee at 100 is very different than the franchisee of 15, you know?
Yeah, let's actually jump into that for a minute because I was just thinking that as you were talking about it. My wife and I owned a couple of territories in a franchise, but they were sub 25 at the time when we bought,
Mhm.
and that we were, we're fairly entrepreneurial, so it worked out just fine. But those who weren't, were like they kind of struggled with it.
Yeah.
Why is that so important? Like how does the candidate profile change from the first 25
Yeah.
to after 100?
Yeah. So we had SOPs on our repairs, for example, like on how to do different repairs. We repair floors, counters, tubs, all these different surfaces. But we didn't have like I remember everything. We were using Teams at the time where
Hmm.
like it was just documents on Teams. Like you'd have to go into Teams and click like the SOP folder and be like, laminate countertop, click that. And, you know, there was a lot of, we needed people like early on, you need people who can take the model and fill in the gaps, feel comfortable with like, hey, look at we don't have an SOP for that, or the SOP that you created is 2 years old. And I was trying this new product, and it's kind of this balance between we want you to follow our process, but you're willing to like innovate alongside us and communicate. That's the big thing. Innovate with communication. And so we're like, yeah, that's great. Try that. Or, oh, no, hold on. We've tried that before and it doesn't work. And here's why,
Hmm.
And so that person early on is so helpful. Whereas, and they kind of have to wear more hats. Whereas the person right now, we really are drilling into the person who can hire well, manage a team. Like they really have to be a team builder. And the early on, they had to do that as well. But like now, because there's a little less having to figure it out on the fly, there's a lot more process that's kind of nailed down. It's like if you can't build a team, if you can't show us how you can really like recruit and retain quality people, then it's probably not going to be a good fit. So
Yeah.
more emphasis on that now.
Oh, 100%. And what would have happened if you would have gotten these great operators that are great at hiring but aren't as entrepreneurial in the first 25? Would they have worked, do you think?
Um, oh, it would have been probably hit and miss on who they hired, and if they had somebody that was more entrepreneurial on their staff. I think it would have been I think it would have been a real challenge. Like
Mhm.
I think of the people who trying to think of the people who didn't work out very well. And this was another we learned a valuable lesson early on. We were thinking that this would be full time, but of course, FranDev's always like, I mean, it could be part time if they got a
Oh
job,
my gosh, yeah.
semi-absentee. And I was like, I don't know. And we gave it a shot a few times. And we're like, yeah, that doesn't work at all. That
Oh,
does
the
not
whole
work at all.
absentee, semi-absentee, and I will say this, everyone with an FSO background wants to claim everything's a semi-absentee
Yeah.
or FDO background, whatever you want to call
Yeah.
it. So it's like this nasty little thing that happens in the industry where people try to set the wrong expectations because it's
Totally.
more appealing. And you just
Yeah.
got sucked into that little
Yeah.
whirlpool, man. Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, after year one, we were like, absolutely no. And the hard thing is getting that through to consultants and brokers. And we'll talk more about this a little bit later, but
Yeah.
like we are a full-time, I just don't see people starting a business and surface experts and other businesses doing it part-time and doing it well. I have yet to see a semi-absentee model work really, really well.
Yeah,
It might exist.
yeah, well, and it's because it's a myth. In fact, that should be. I don't know if you know. I've been writing articles about the mythology of franchising,
Yeah,
and some of them have gotten a little crazy. Like I've gotten so much feedback about it. It's been shocking because people are
yeah,
like, wait, what? Like who believes that? And I'm like, and I'll share examples like, that's insane. Like nobody should
yeah,
believe this or do this.
yeah.
But that's one where semi-absenteeism, I think it was Johnny Francis or franchise. I forget who I heard say this first, and I don't even know if he coined it, but he calls it, or maybe Scott Greenberg calls it earned absentee
Oh
ownership.
yeah,
And that's a thing where you like you
totally,
build it, you work, you build your team up, and now I'm going to go golfing or go mushroom hunting
totally.
with my kids more than I
Yeah,
did before because I've put in the blood, sweat, and tears to build the business infrastructure enough that I can afford to
totally.
hire the middle management to run the business while I'm not, while I'm being strategic, maybe
Yeah.
buying another territory, building up another
And
market. Yeah.
the hard thing is, and this is where you'll be talking to a candidate and they'll say something to the lines like, well, eventually I want to step back. And everyone wants that, sure. And we have franchisees that are at that point who travel quite a bit. They're not as involved in the day to day. But the person who's like, yeah, so I mean, yeah. I get it, I got to put in the work, but that's really where I want to go. And there's a lack of it's a lack of understanding on one hand. It's just sort of they don't really understand small business or come out of corporate America, and they really struggle to understand all the
Mhm.
hats they have to wear. But then two, there's also a lack of humility, and this is what I've seen, and we kind of have like a list of
Mhm.
red flags we look for, and that lack of humility is the person who's not willing to like put on their like worker hat and go out and do the sales and like get involved with, like basically roll up their sleeves to get involved with the franchisees
Mhm.
or with their technicians and their salespeople.
Yeah.
They kind of like look at that semi-absentee and they start like inching towards that too soon, you know? And
Yeah.
it's like, whoa, 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 you get there when you have a great team set in place, everyone knows their role, and there's like a good, communication that's happening. And that takes time, you know? Could happen in 2 years, could happen in 5 years. I don't know.
Yep. But you have to build enough capital up to be able to afford the middle management. So you also have to be willing to
Really.
take a pay cut if you want the lifestyle up front, or you have to build a business big enough you can do it. I
And
totally.
what we find is people who can know and show they understand how the business runs. Those are the people that are more likely to be able to detach from the business than just the people who have capital. Because we've
Yeah.
had franchisees who were doing semi-absentee and they burned through a ton of capital and he had no idea if his sales guy was doing well. He just looked at like, is he booking work or is he not booking work? And I was like, well, there's more to it. You got to get out and work in the field with them.
Yeah. Understand the business and the people. Totally get it.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, so let's shift because that actually, I've seen brands that got sucked into that messaging, started hiring a bunch of investor types that didn't really want to get their hands dirty. They spent a
Yeah.
bunch of money. What was happening, and you tell me if you saw the same thing, is they would, the investors were happy to write a check. Anything that doesn't require them to put in efforts, they'll put their money to work for them. But the problem was is no one was closing deals. Like they were pushing out money into the markets, getting leads back in. No one was doing the dirty work to do the estimates and get the deals closed and follow up on the proposals. And then when it came time to deliver the service, you know, again, they wouldn't touch that either. So what happened is they were blowing a lot of money, had lower than average conversion rates, and so they were like, this isn't working. And it was
Yeah.
because they weren't working the model, which was
Yeah. Well, and are you talking investors in the franchisor or in the franchisee?
no, no, no,
Like,
investor mindset franchise
oh yeah,
owners.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we'll just hard pass on those people because it has not worked out. And yeah, I got a call with a guy tomorrow who's former CEO, has done very well in his career. And my number one concern is this guy going to be able to roll up his sleeves
Mhm.
and like walk the talk? Or is he going to be like, I've been a C-suite forever. I'm kind of just let my people do their thing and I'll take a step back. Like I'm like, absolutely no on that person. We're
Yeah.
and it's not that they're bad people, they're just not a good fit for a company.
Oh yeah. And you have to know that. But you learn
Yeah.
that from mistakes you make early on, typically, right?
Yep.
Mhm. Yeah, you've talked about culture a bit, Jacob.
Yeah.
Tell us, so how does this culture take shape and how do you make it deliberate now? Because I think it probably, if you're like most businesses, the culture started to take shape on its own, and then there's probably a time where you said, "Oh wow, we need to become very intentional about this culture and then try to manage toward it." Can you tell us
Yeah.
about that journey of like developing a culture or
Yeah.
discovering it?
Yeah. So I would say this is the thing that I think from the get-go, having had my own business in Portland and run it, the thing I was probably intentional from the get-go on. I wouldn't say I was always like right on how I did it, but I was mindful of it. And so early on, when we were selling franchises, I'll just kind of share. Um, I work with my sister. Erin is our CSO, Chief Sales Officer. It's a bit of a like kind of a misnomer. She's involved in FranDev a little bit on like virtual discovery days, but mostly she trains our franchisees how to sell. So she's like training people on our sales methodology and their salespeople. So we were very much like open. Like we're also my dad was involved in the first year. And so it was like we're a family business.
Yeah.
During training week, so we'd be onboarding, people would come to Spokane for training week. And every Tuesday night, during a training week, and we're doing a training every month with 1 or 2 months exceptions here and there, we would go and host a dinner. My parents would host a dinner at their place. And so we would schlep people from downtown Spokane out to the north side, which by Spokane terms is like pretty much Canada, right? It's like 20-minute drive, but we're like, gosh, that's a long drive. But it's a weekday. We drive people out there in my personal car. Aaron would pick up a group of people. So we'd be taking the owners, their techs, their salespeople. We'd all go out. And for the first 30 some training weeks, we did that. And we did it because we wanted to be really intentional about like, we're about quality. Like our values are, we talk about serve others, be a problem solver, and trust the process.
Mhm.
And there's no better way to instill like culture than just like time together. So we'd have a meal together, we'd be hanging out on my dad's parents' porch, mom and dad are making food, and we'd have good conversations. And then on top of that, year one, like literally, our first franchise was March of 2020. So like, we didn't have anything in it. We started franchising in April, sold our first franchise in April. And then in March, right before COVID, like announcement came out,
Uh-huh.
we had our first national conference. And it was, a joke. We had like, I don't know, 12 franchises there. We actually did breakout sessions. I look back and laugh. Like, we had like breakouts. I was like 4 people in each session. I don't know why we did a breakout session, but we had 12 franchises there. And we have had a conference every year, and it's a very expensive conference, and we spend a lot of time with our franchisees, and we want to make sure that like we are instilling our culture. And I think the one of the things I'm most proud about is the culture amongst our owners, amongst our headquarters staff, is one of like caring for one another and really supporting. So when people call our validation and they're like, hey, I'm looking at surface experts, whatever, it is very common where our franchisees are answering all these questions and they're like, hey, here's my cell phone. Reach out to me. If you got any more questions, glad to help you out. And they are so quick to help each other out.
Mhm.
And it happens not just in FranDev, like we have a Teams chat that's owners only. And all day, every day, hey, have you guys anyone dealt with this? Has anyone worked this? And people are helping each other out, sending in, documents or advice. And that culture, I think, started in the beginning of really try to bring people who are servant minded. They truly care about helping other people. Um, and there's a little bit of competitiveness for some people, but a lot of it is just around like, hey, we want to see everyone thrive, you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah, that's the beauty of the franchise model, though, right?
Totally.
I remember when we were, because I'd seen it and I'd done podcasts on it before we ever bought our franchises. But then when I was in the system, like, they put me on the FAC, but we were like, I've spent more time talking to other franchise owners to figure out what they were struggling with and figure out how to solve a problem, a design issue, a fit issue, a
Yeah.
brand issue, whatever. Like we were in the athletic apparel and equipment space.
Yeah.
It was super fun. But man,
You
like
do this naturally. You're like naturally curious and you're also quick to help. Like, and you're a connector. That's like your gifting. I can see. So I can see you were probably really good at being like, hey, you know who's really good at this? Talk to such and such.
yeah, that's fair. I mostly it was me sucking it up from everybody at first.
Yeah.
And uh
That's how it is.
yeah, but it's funny because also we were like everybody said the same thing. We can't figure out how to make this work in recreation. We can't. And I was like, you guys are spending all day chasing like, this a deal of this size. Let's say a $5,000 project all day long, and these recreation departments are like $50,000 projects. Like, why is nobody figuring this out? So I made
Yeah.
that a personal mission. I was like, I'm gonna crack that code, and we did.
Yeah.
It was fun. Like I felt bigger impact there even than
Yeah.
working with the high schools and junior highs. So,
Hmm.
but it was collaborative. I got
Yeah.
feedback from everybody. So that culture you're talking about of where people can serve each other, there doesn't need to be any conflict, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you have protected territories. There's really no reason you shouldn't be calling the guy across town and figuring out how to work on something together and
Yeah.
go tackle a big account that's got multiple locations. Like it should be hyper collaborative by its nature.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yep.
love it.
Exactly.
Well, you mentioned so throughout this process, you guys are trying to identify the right franchise owners. There are always red flags and green lights, right? You've kind of hinted at this a little bit, but I want to get
Yep.
deliberate about it because a lot of people listening, they might need to dial this in a little bit so they avoid a lot of
Yeah.
the red flags. So talk to about you mentioned kind of the core values and how did you measure alignment? Because that's like saying that is one thing, but the actual practical application of alignment with core values. How did you find somebody who was a red flag when it
Yeah.
came to core values?
So, this is, I've been using GPT to try to come up with like better questions to ask people to see. Like, I gave it all my core values and said, hey, how do I like ask questions that really gets at whether people are in alignment without like tipping my hand of like, this is what I'm looking for. So I'm kind of working on that. And this is like a constant area of growth. I let's How do I want to approach this? Let's talk about red flags. The people, let's talk, that's those are and it's a spectrum, right? So there's these obvious red flags that are far on the spectrum, and then there's these like green lights on the other side. Um, and there's red flags along the way. The obviously the hardest are the people that are in the middle, right? The kind of that middle part. So let's talk about the extreme red flags. Extreme red flags to me are number one, um, the person who is just high ego, and they don't have the humility. Like they are not, they cannot, they're the hero of their story. Um, when there's been a setback, it wasn't them. And they're very dismissive on when we talk about memorizing a sales script or following a process, which is our core value. Yeah, of course I'll do that. Yeah, that's no problem. Get a lot of yeah, right? Unfortunately, downstream, that person turns into a yeah, but that person's like, yeah, but in my territory, yeah, I get why people do that, but with my situation, with my background, and that turns into a whole disaster. So the yeah, ego person, they're a hard pass.
I love
Um,
that. So they turn into it. So the yeah turn into a yeah but because they're yeah means I'm not listening to you. What you're
yeah,
saying isn't that important to me. I know better than you do, right? That's really what they're
totally.
saying.
Yeah, and they are very much there. I didn't know this term before I started franchising, but have you ever heard the term internal locus of control, external locus of control?
Locus of control.
Locus of control, yeah.
Yeah, totally.
So,
Yeah, totally.
so it's this idea that like one of our core values we're kind of revamping or adding to our core values, and one of them is um, takes accountability. Like this, good, bad, or otherwise, they can take accountability. And it's the yeah, the ego-driven people. They're all about taking accountability when they're successful.
Yeah.
But like, tell me about a time you really struggled with something, or your team didn't hit it like a metric. How'd you handle that? Like when you drop the ball as a leader, you
Mhm.
clearly this is something that you had a goal, you had a project, and you just dropped the ball. they could go in and kind of be like, yeah, and then this happened, that happened, and just realize I had a really bad guy on my team. And okay, what'd you learn from that? Well, I should have put up with that guy, blah, blah, blah. If it keeps coming back to why it was that other person's fault, or why it was, unrealistic expectation, blah, 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 that should tell you, hey, you're dealing with somebody who's not, they're a external locus of control, not internal, right?
Yep, totally. Yeah,
So, yeah,
they almost want to farm out responsibility and accountability, and they project it on everybody else. They can't take ownership for their own
yeah.
mistakes. It's yeah,
And that's,
and I'll just tell you this, like even though we're not, hiring or recruiting franchises, like I try to interview for the exact same thing because
Mhm.
I need someone who's they're going to have enough chutzpah to go out and try something new, but
Sure.
also have enough humility to say, hey, I screwed that up. Let me go clean up my mess. Like I
Yeah.
need that person. I don't need someone who's going to be like, oh, it was the marketing's problem. Oh, we don't have enough leads. Oh, like
Yeah,
that's
yeah, that
baloney.
is. I
Yeah.
just said yeah, yeah, yeah. But no, it is. I agree. I agree with that. Yes.
I feel
No.
like
So
I
the
feel like
other,
later in this podcast, you're going to become a yeah, but guy. I can tell now.
yeah.
You just revealed yourself.
But the problem with no,
Yeah.
the challenge, other ones that we deal with. So there's a couple others. There's the kind of like consummate consultant, and what I mean by this is this person's been in consulting for much of their career. They are very analytical. They don't they're not prompted towards action. They see a problem, they stop, they analyze it, they kind of benchmark it. We had a franchisee, sweetheart of a guy. He's sending me, spreadsheets with pivot charts on how his, territory is, how it compares to others and really why his territory is different. And then I look up his sales report and he is doing like a tenth of the amount of like sales calls that he should be doing. And I just find him like, hey, just go out and talk to your customer. Like spreadsheets aside, we can have a conversation around your spreadsheets. I want you to do 2 full weeks of sales, and then let's put time back on my calendar. Let's talk. Full weeks of sales, and it was just really hard for him to focus on action. He so badly wanted to talk about kind of all the other challenges. And what I found is people who kind of have this background, sometimes they could be independent consultants, sometimes they're working for a large corporation. Oftentimes they struggle with time management. So they don't block their time. They're kind of pulled in a lot of directions and they're not able to focus on the thing that moves the needle for their business.
Mhm.
And so in the previous career, they had meetings on meetings on meetings, and a lot of it was set up for them. And
Mhm.
now they're in control of their schedule. And it's like, Dave Ramsey telling when he talks about like tell your money where you're going to spend it. That's the beauty of a budget, is like
Mhm.
you're telling your money where to go. It's the same thing with time management. It's like you tell your time where it's going to go. And even if you get it wrong in the beginning, you're at least like in control of putting it towards the things that you need to do.
Yeah.
And the consultant really struggles with this.
Yeah, and I will just share some examples. I've worked with consultants, and I've done consulting as well. And I'm an odd consultant because I am there to make an impact. And if I
Yeah,
can't see the impact, then I've actually I told a brand once years and years ago that they're like, well, what do you recommend we do? I was like, well, you should fire me. And they're like, excuse me? And I was like, you're not listening to anything I'm telling you. You're not implementing the things that I've spent my time to develop for you. Like,
yeah,
and if that's the case, why are you writing a check for me every month, right?
yeah,
So there's an accountability measure, but a lot of consultants, especially long-term consultants, this is what I've observed. They love to tell everyone how to do something, but they're not
yeah.
going to do it themselves. There's usually
It's
there's like a weird layer of hypocrisy with a lot, and some consultants are masterful at identifying and recommending fixes, but they're usually a D plus at actually
an execution.
implementing, yeah, and executing.
Yeah,
Totally agree with you.
I literally this just happened recently. I was working with a franchise, and I gotta be careful what I say. But super nice guy. We go out to lunch or go out to dinner with a neighboring person who's just about to launch.
Mhm.
And this guy who I'm working with, I'm out in the field working with him, is just struggling and has like really having a hard time hiring and just using his time. And the new guy who hasn't launched yet, he's still in onboarding. He asking questions, and the existing guy, longtime consultant, goes, "Hey, I'd love to get together with you. Here's what you got to do." And I'm thinking in my mind, you've got to take your advice. Like, you just put on your consultant hat, take your own advice. Like, that's good advice. Go do it. Like, not that I don't want to, I didn't say that, but I don't want it to be like, sticking it to him. But I'm like, that's what you got to do, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, let's
So,
stick around after dinner, buddy. Let's I want
yeah.
to put your nose in it.
Yeah. So that the consummate consultant. The other one is kind of the lone wolf, and this would be the person who, depending what their background is, maybe they've had a company before, maybe they worked for a larger company, but they're not great at building teams. They can't articulate. And the question I normally ask this person is, tell me about a team you were really proud of, a team that you developed. How did you find those people? What were you looking for in those interviews? Like when you were looking for skills aside, tell me about like the type of person. What were the things, the traits you were trying to pull out? How did you do that? How did you, like when I want to talk about retention, like how do you get buy-in to what you were trying to build? Right? The lone wolf really struggles with this. It's all either hypothetical, theoretical. They don't have an actual specific examples. And a lot of times what I find is employees are bothersome to them. Like the reason they don't have employees is like, oh my gosh, I had this one job and was managing people and oh, forget that. I don't like they just don't want to deal with employees.
Mhm.
That is not going to be a good fit for surface experts. Like they got to have, they're small teams, but you got to be able to hire and manage people.
Yeah. And they'll probably do great initially as they're out like hustling and bustling and building business.
Mhm.
And
Don't scale.
they'll plateau half of what they should be, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
or you're lucky if half. Because they're a one-man operation, and you're like, and you'll generally hear something like, "There's no good people here." I'm telling you, I can't find somebody who wants to work in my city or my state, and it's always somebody else's fault.
Yeah. Well, there's that external locus of control again,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So those are the red flags that we really try to pull out.
Hmm.
Um, the people that we're trying to like really draw to is they can answer the how they look, what do they look for when they're hiring people, how do they pull that out, how do they retain people and build that team, like that team mentality.
Hmm.
Recently we were interviewing this guy who is he's a D3 tennis coach, and never been in, he's always been a tennis coach his entire career.
Well,
Why I think he's going to be really good is he understands that his students have other things going on in their life, and his assistant coaches, they're not getting paid very much, but he knows how to retain them by investing in them in the relationship and really like building them up and
hmm.
really constantly tying them back into what they're trying to achieve. Like he's a very successful tennis coach, but he doesn't have NIL money. He doesn't have like all the stuff that like, a big D1 program might have. What he has is he's really great at investing in people and like getting them focused to like, here's what we're trying to build. He's going to be a great, whether it's with us or some other, we haven't finalized anything with him, but he's going to do well.
Hmm. Yeah. Love that. We come back to the same challenge, which is building teams, right? That seems to be
Yep.
the ultimate measure of growth and success. So that's a green flag type of a
Yeah.
personality, right?
Yep.
And tell me, how do you make sure that there's a playbook around this? Have you guys documented this in some way so everybody knows, like, hey, these are the things we're looking for in the process?
Yeah. This is what we're working on right now. So I've always been AI adverse. I'm a bit of a Luddite. Um, I a lot of our FranDev process has been okay. Here's our sales funnel, and it culminates with the call with me after they've gone through everything, including the virtual discovery day. And unfortunately, I would say a lot is riding on that one-on-one call with me. Now, we've had good success and we have franchisees that are doing really well, which is awesome. But there are people who, man, if I had a better plan, I would have saved them a lot of money and myself a lot of hassle and money probably as well. Of just like, hey, this is not going to be a good fit. So we're in the process right now of documenting. I've been asking. I got this whole thread on ChatGPT of like what I keep putting into um, on my one-on-one calls now. I am recording them. I'm taking the recording transcript and I'm putting that transcript into chat. And because I've been training it, like this is what I'm looking for. I'm asking it to like grade this candidate. Like, what questions am I not asking? Um, it's hard because there's just so much content they want to like throw at you. So I'm trying to keep paring it down. So that's like we're trying to create this funnel right now, and what we want to do is introduce an assessment, and we started building out this like it's a 25 question assessment that starts to get at that core value fit, including 3 questions that are like they have to write it out, type out, tell me about a time,
Yeah.
and we want to put that into our FranDev process right after like the first validation call. So that's kind of where we're going is like we know when people get to the validation call, they're generally like really excited because they're talking with other existing franchisees. They're getting a lot of questions answered. I would say generally it's fairly positive, and they're like, hey, I want to learn more. Now we want to give them this assessment and see how they score.
Hmm.
See,
Yeah.
we have not figured this all out, and we're obviously in the process.
Yeah, well, I love that. I built something similar for my sales team, where they are, they plug in the feedback or the transcript from their call into the tool. The tool spits out kind of a grade across multiple key categories of
Yeah.
what should they accomplish. Things like, did you build rapport? How well did you just discover what their actual needs were? Did you make sure that you scheduled the next event, advance the deal? Like just, I mean, this is core 101,
Yeah.
101, 201 stuff, but it
Is this
helps a
for
lot.
grading them?
Mhm. Yeah.
Grading them and they're
It's
okay.
to grade them. So not quite the same thing, but it's similar in that
Yeah, similar.
I find that you can train the model pretty well. The next step is automating it. So that's what I'm working on this quarter as a rock. But yeah, I think that's important. That's a great way to use AI as long as it's a paid version. So you're not just pumping all these transcripts out into the ether.
Yeah.
Then it's a great idea.
Yeah. I have a paid version. I don't know. Hopefully it's not going out in the ether. We'll see. That's the problem with AI. I have no idea.
Yeah, no, no. If you've got a paid version, it should be yours. It
Private.
should be your data.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so that's where we're at with that.
Awesome. No, I love that you're documenting, trying to get smarter, but trying to automate that process as much as you can. Hey, I know we've got just a little bit of time left, but I want to give you a minute to share a little bit about your experience, like working with brokers and consultants. Like, how do you convey your core values and make sure that the candidates that are getting reflected back to you from those ecosystems align with your core values? What works for you to get that done?
Yeah. So the evolution is we started with the entrepreneur source and we're doing a lot of work with brokers with the entrepreneur source really until last year. We're still doing work with entrepreneur source, but that's tapered off quite a bit. We do work with a couple other broker networks, the U Network, IFPG, little bits here and there. And then we jumped in with franchise, and franchise has done like an amazing, they've like grown our business substantially in the last 8 months. Um, and I would say working with consultants, being really, really clear about deal breakers. And this is where this is, I would say, an area of improvement is we're not semi-absentee. We're looking people who have proven to grow teams and really build teams. And so I have found that even in our own FranDev team, we need to be better at clarifying what we need to look for because I think the challenge is with consultants, when you're dealing with consultants and they're dealing with their 40% commission, is if you don't have some early like identifiers of red flags that your friend did, people can like weed people out, then the candidate goes through all the process and then they get to me and I'm like, this is not a good fit. Why am I
Mhm.
dealing with this right now? Like this guy somehow slipped through and I feel this pressure to be like I'm a total optimist, right?
Mhm.
Well, maybe I'm just catching him on a bad day. Maybe he'll be a really good recruiter and he's just not showing that to me. And
Yeah.
so that's where I've gotten in trouble where I'll say these maybes because I don't want to let the like I heard someone say this once, and it's so true. Like I'm a people pleaser in recovery. You know, I that is like totally me. So I don't want to let it down with this consultant, but I've gotten to the point where I'm like, no, 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 no. I am more comfortable saying no to these people, and we need to get the consultants in our own FranDev team to be able to spot those like obvious red flags and exit people quickly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And or
yeah,
you know, encourage them to send them over to your competitors, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I'm like, I literally, I just feel like we won a top closer or whatever the closer award for franchise. And we went from having like 60 active leads to like 120 active leads. And most of them were franchise. And I felt like people were just kind of throwing leads at us. And we're like, hey, this person, is working. They want to work. They want a semi-absentee. I'm like all these like obvious no's that like our FranDev team just like it was bogging our entire system down, and it should have been no, 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 no. Okay, let's scrape those 30 leads because they're just not even close. Let's
Yeah.
get to the people who are willing to like follow through our process. So
Mhm.
I think we're at a point now. We've brought on extra FranDev help, but yeah, working with consultants, bring in. If I had just like advice to give, I would say really draw a hard line on what those are those like absolute no's and yeses are, and really work on conveying that to consultants and brokers and your FranDev team so that you can get them to exit earlier in the process, because it sucks when you're the decision maker and somebody who's obvious has put in all this work and they get to you and you're like, absolutely no, it's not fair to the candidate, and it just is a waste of your time.
Yeah, but you know that the broker community can sense that about you too, right? There are people deep down, the brokers know I shouldn't have pushed that guy along. And if they buy a franchise and he gets a big check, there's still in the back of his mind or her mind that thought of probably shouldn't have put it there. And
Yeah,
over time, that'll create some integrity questioning in your brand.
yeah,
It'll also blow up at some point. You'll get the wrong people operating. Those people, they don't just call you when they're upset. They call the guy who pimped out the
yeah,
franchise opportunity for
yeah,
them. So it's end of the day, what you're describing is that not only is it morally and ethically correct,
yeah.
which I would expect nothing less of you, by the way. But
Like,
it's also long-term business. It's the right plan for your
yeah,
business. Get the right candidates in who can build the right business and stay true and loyal to the ecosystem, this culture that you've built. And then at the end of the day, they're going to thrive in the environment. They're going to have be franchise owners that love it. And then at the they'll a year or two down the road, they'll reach out to this consultant and ask for another territory, ask for another brand that's complementary. Like it's, like
yeah.
that's what you want as a broker, as a good broker, anyway.
Yeah, and I think having had to close some franchises in past years, I like it's such a disservice to say yes to somebody who just isn't going to be a good fit.
Yeah.
And so if I could take it back, and I knew this is the hardest thing about, I think one of the hardest things about franchising is knowing who's going to do well. And, there's some people that we've said yes to that I'm like, this person's going to crush. And they did poorly. And then we have other people, I can think of a few really high performers who I almost said no to, and they're crushing it. And they're great. They're great owners. Not just they're doing well, they're actually really good people. So it's really, really difficult to kind of flesh that out.
Yeah, and you get better over time, but I think
Yeah.
what you've described today are understand who your absolute red flags are, understand who your absolute green flags are, and start documenting the process and learning about how do I ferret that information out and understand that about them. Spending time with them in person, like discovery days or confirmation days, whatever people call them, like
Yeah.
it's not about just getting them hyped up and amped up and letting them meet all the executive team. It's really about spending time with them so you can see what do they like when somebody brings out a steak that's a little undercooked? You know,
Yeah.
is this guy?
Well, it's funny. We quit doing in-person discovery days. We haven't done it in-person discovery days since COVID hit.
Oh, really?
I would say the one nice thing about, I mean, honestly, the discovery days were a long, drawn out ordeal. It was a lot of work.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know. I'm curious how we would be in selecting people if we went back to in-person discovery days. They spend a lot of time with our friend. We require them to be on two validation calls,
Hmm.
which are like recorded Zoom calls.
Yeah.
Um, so they get a lot of time with our franchisees, and we actually empower our franchisees to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down on people.
Yeah.
So if people don't ask questions or they're not engaged or they're asking weird questions, our franchisees would be like, they'll send us a report after the call. Hey, thumbs down on this person, asking some really weird questions, really obsessed about making his, return on his investment, you know, and it's great because the people on those calls, I trust their opinion.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't know how many brands officially do that well, but what you're describing is a really important process. There's no better judge. Well, it depends. If you've got the right people in your ecosystem, then
Yeah.
this is a true statement. There's no better judge of who's going to be a great person to share a foxhole with them in the franchise family than somebody who's already in the foxhole,
Yeah.
right? Than a franchise
Yeah.
owner. Knows what it takes to be successful, has seen the guys burn out who struggle. And I've been through that too. I did a lot of validation when we were franchise owners, and there are a few times where I called as soon as I was done. There was one guy, it was like 5 o'clock my time. It's just like seven. I know, like a Tuesday. And the guy was like hammered drunk on a Tuesday at like 7 o'clock his time. And I was like, weird. But then he was like telling me how like, he didn't have a lot of money and how he wasn't sure what he wanted to do, but his dad really wanted him to get into business. And I was like, whoa, this guy is like doesn't have a single
Major red
flag
flag.
other than a red flag, right? It's like
Yeah.
almost
Major red flag.
dude, almost everything he said. So I called the CEO and I was like, hey, this guy, no, not a 10-foot pole. I do not bring him on. He'll be a burden on you. He'll be a burden on us. He's gonna whine the whole time, and
Yeah.
he may be inebriated when he shows up to client meetings. I don't know, but
Yeah.
like that part, you drink if you want. I don't care.
Yeah.
But I was just
Did
like,
Theo listen?
yeah, I don't know actually. That was right around the time we were about to sell our franchises and exit the system. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you. I hope he did because
Yeah.
that
We
guy.
had a franchisee do a ride along, a guy do a ride along with an existing franchisee. And I called the franchisee and said, hey, how did that go? And he's like, oh, he's an interesting guy. He's definitely focused a lot on the money side of things. I was like, okay. I mean, it's not an absolute red flag. Like, oh, and he got two margaritas at lunch. I was like, oh. And he said, oh man, like he didn't even offer to pay for it. So I paid, covered it. I was like,
Yikes.
hey,
Yeah, gone.
like,
Yeah.
come on, are you kidding me? You're drinking as you're doing that on at lunch and two drinks, and then you don't even pay for lunch. I'm like, dude, no way. Hard
Scheisse.
pass.
Yeah, hard pass. Oh my gosh. It's funny. Well, I think we could go on and on about this. Thanks
Yeah.
for making time, Jacob, to share your
Yeah. Thanks
experience.
for
And
having me.
if somebody wanted to reach out to you, let's say they liked what they heard, they had questions about your process, these cool GPTs you're working on now, what's the best way for someone to reach out to you?
My email is Jacob, Jacob, at surfaceexperts.com. So surface, SURFACE, and then experts with an S at the end, .com.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Good man. No, I appreciate you joining us and
Yeah.
look forward to seeing you again sometime soon.
All right. Thanks, man.